Hi, my name is Dave Reske, CEO of Now Speed Marketing, and welcome to this edition of Marketing in the Now, where we talk about the best ideas in marketing and digital marketing. And my guest today is Nate Girard. He's a serial entrepreneur who started businesses across the cannabis, tech, and real estate markets. He's based in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, and he's got a unique way of identifying problems and creating companies that solve them. Nate, welcome to the show.
Oh, Dave, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you for that great intro as well. It says a lot about who I have become, not so much who I am, but I appreciate that all the same. Thank you.
Well, we're going to learn a lot about that in this conversation. So, you and I have been talking about launching new businesses, and it struck me that you really have a unique approach that's very powerful. And I want to talk about how you do that. But just first, briefly, just give me a sense of how you got here. How did you go from, kind of working in corporate to becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's a story in itself. When I originally got going out of college, I went to Endicott undergrad. I graduated in 2005. I know, don't let the gray hair fool you. But I graduated in '05. And I immediately kind of followed a few of my friends. We all moved into Boston and we were all kind of trying to figure out what is our next step in life. This is post kind of dot-com boom and I was originally set to be a certified financial planner. That was the direction I was going in. I was going to work for Ameriprise, which is a branch of American Express, and things just did not work out, is a good way to put it. I got the apartment in the North End. I was going to be close to Charlestown, where the headquarters was, and showed up for my first day of work. And they were like, as a matter of fact, I know you just worked all summer. We just gave you a big bonus, but they were shutting that entire chapter of the company down. So I showed up to work for my first day, and they were basically like, we don't have a job for you. So I kind of had to scramble and figure out what the next step was. A buddy of mine was the manager down at a local pub, and I took a job as a bartender. I was just like, I'll figure out my next step. My parents were kind of like, how are you going to afford rent in the North End? And I said, I'll figure it out. And that was kind of like the start of my entrepreneurial journey. While I was bartending one day, a random group came in, and they just so happened to be the original founders of the company, which is now known as Wayfair. They lived in the Boston area, and we got to talking. One of them was actually from Pittsfield, Mass, which is now where I live. He was with another guy that was also from Pittsfield that, ironically enough, had played soccer at a local high school against me when I was a soccer player. And he kind of recognized me, and he was kind of like, you look really familiar. We got to talking, and they were like, what are you doing tomorrow? And I'm like, bartending, I guess. And they're like, why don't you come over to my parents' garage in the South End, and we're going to tell you what we're all about. And I became the 10th employee at that point in time of this growing company. And we kind of just went from there. So I got to see a company that used to be known as CSN Stores, was what they were called before Wayfair. I got to watch them grow from 10 to a little over 2,500 before I ended up kind of leaving that corporate side of the business. And I grew with that company. I got to be promoted. I got to have great different positions within the business, and just got to learn right then and there how you got to wear many hats in business.
I love that story, Nate, because one could hear that story and say, "Oh, he was just lucky." Luck. Hey, he was lucky, right place, the right time, whatever. But I have a philosophy that luck favors the prepared,
Hmm.
and you were prepared. You were, ready when that opportunity presented itself, and then to go from the 10th employee, not everybody makes it the first 6 months with those startups, right? So to be able
Sure.
to kind of stay there through that growth and come out with a senior position and all of that experience must have been an amazing
It
experience.
was. It was amazing. And it got to a point where, again, I will definitely say that luck has been on my side for a long time, whether it's preparedness or whether it's, making your own luck, I guess. Sometimes you just can't be afraid to shoot your shot. That's one thing if there's one thing I have learned in business for the 20 plus years that I've been doing business, you can't be afraid to ask the hardest question. And nine times out of 10, if you can just get them to start the conversing with you, whether it's a prospective client, whether it's your eventual significant other, husband, wife, whatever it might be. Sometimes you just got to get that conversation going and then let it develop naturally. And that's kind of where I went. My now current wife, who I have three children with, she was living in the Berkshires. She was a couple years younger than I was, and she actually knew who my two younger brothers were. And one day I had moved out of the North End. I moved to Alston, Brighton, and the day that we had moved into this new apartment, in walked a girl with a friend. With the sister of one of my roommates, right? So I had a roommate, his sister, and her came down to visit us, and boom, my future wife walked into my life, right? And it was like not the match made in heaven aspect of it, but it's kind of like, wow, this girl's amazing. I want to get to know her. And then our relationship developed. And she was actually in the process of moving out to Boston. And I was kind of in the process of, I want to kind of get out of Boston. I've been here now for 7 or 8 years and kind of felt like the city had taken its toll on me. And I was looking to come back to the Berkshires where I was originally from because I just had this entrepreneurial vision like, hmm, the cost of living is really high out here. I feel like what I'm looking to do in the future, I might be better served to do out there with a little bit of a different mentality than some of the people around the Berkshires. And yeah, I just kind of came back and
So you made a massive lifestyle change, left the big company. Take us fast forward. You started several
mhm.
companies,
Yeah,
and I just want to talk about your process of launching new businesses because I
yeah,
think it's
sure.
really important.
So yeah,
Because
coming
you've had
home.
a lot of success there, and you kind of thought about this way of looking at problems and turning them into companies, and I think our listeners could learn a lot from that.
Yeah,
So
sure.
let's
So
do it.
coming home in like 2012, 2013 timeframe, real estate had kind of just went through like this recessive crash in '08 and '09, and it was kind of back on the upswing. And I didn't really know what I was going to do when I kind of came home. I just knew I needed a little bit of time off. I had been grinding for years, and I was like, I need to figure out what the next step in my life is. And you kind of reconnect with old friends. That's just what I did. I went on Facebook, I went on different places, and I was like, hey, haven't seen you in a while. I'm back in the Berkshires. Let's grab a beer. Let's grab a bite to eat, whatever. And one of the guys that I ended up reaching out to was a real estate broker locally, and he was kind of like, I've known you for a long time. I think you'd do really well if you were in real estate. I knew a lot of people, and real estate was kind of like the next step for me, where I was like, hey, it's based on how hard you want to work. It's based on the effort you want to put in, and that's what your reward is going to be. And at the same time, I had been living in an apartment for so long in Boston, I didn't really know what home ownership for me could look like. So I had to learn a little bit about, can home ownership be something in my future? And that was kind of the first insight into, I'm going to manage my own book of business. You're commission based, but you also can figure out ways where I'm going to buy an apartment building, I'm going to fix it up, I'm going to learn from YouTube and other sources how to do the things that I want to do, so I don't have to necessarily pay a contractor, somebody that might not necessarily be in my price range. So you'd learn how to start doing stuff. And that construction aspect really started teaching me the steps to take when you're doing projects, when you're building companies. There's a guideline and a step. And I mean, I went to school for business management. So something I always was very good at was writing a business plan. Right. And being realistic, because I wasn't afraid to go onto LinkedIn, look at a respected individual in the field that I wanted to be part of, and ask them for advice, or ask them for, hey, I'm not your competitor. You're based in California. I'm based in Massachusetts. I just got a couple of questions I was wondering if you'd be willing to answer. And you'd be surprised how quickly the community on LinkedIn was willing to lend a hand, because they're like, you're right. You're not my competitor. I was once in your shoes starting out, and I'd love to answer 3 or 4 quick questions. Do that with 6 or 7 different people. Before you know it, you've compiled a realistic, projectable business plan, and now you just got to figure out, how do I get that money to kind of start what I actually want to do. And that was how my first company was born. I ended up partnering with a family member of mine, and I launched my first real estate brokerage back in 2015, and it's called Royal Property Group, and it still exists today. It's 10 years old, and that was kind of my first foray into, I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and I'm going to build businesses. I'm going to create jobs. I'm going to provide quality housing. I'm going to do whatever I can to improve the lives of others that surround me.
And that's a such an important first step, and I'm glad you talked about that because taking that step to do the research, to ask people in the industry and really ask the hard questions about that, and then build an actual business plan. is so important. It feels like some entrepreneurs just jump in
Hmm.
thinking they know all the answers. Oh, I'm smarter than them. I got it all figured out. I know what the customer wants. I don't have to ask the customer. I know what the industry is all about. I don't have to do my homework. And if you do that, you're missing a big opportunity. But it sounds like you kind of take the approach of really asking the hard questions, talking to the key people, and learning a lot before you build that plan.
Yeah, and this was before there was Zoom. This was really before you could do a face-to-face meeting. So I had to pick up the phone and get on the horn with people and have an actual conversation. In some cases, it was just respected people within the Berkshires that were local to me that, hey, can I grab coffee with you? Coffee's a couple bucks, but if you can get a 15-minute face-to-face with somebody first thing in the morning before their day is just taken over, I have found that that is sometimes the most valuable time you can get with someone, right? Where it's like, hey, I respect your journey. I love what you're doing. I love the businesses that you're involved with, and you're a mentor. Will you be a mentor to me? Before you know it, I was meeting for weekly coffee with certain people that I really admired, and that were really just sharing their insights into, hey, this is something I found really difficult. This is something I found really easy for me, and I think everybody's got those things that they have a knack for. One thing that I like to tend to believe in myself is I know a little about a lot, but there is a lot that I know nothing about, right? So I may be knowing a little bit in all these little areas, but there are experts within these knowledge bases that are available and they're there for you. You just got to be willing to go out there and find them and ask for them. Nowadays, it's a Google search, right? You find it on Google and boom, I got my expert and I know who I got to talk to. And where kind of real estate led me to the next level. I at one point had gotten into the restaurant business because I love food or whatever, and that was not a right choice to get into the restaurant industry. It was very short lived. My wife quickly reminded me, family is more important, and the restaurant, and it went away, and we closed it and we moved on, and when I continued to do real estate really created the opportunities for me that I've now taken advantage of today. We ended up buying a building that was going to operate our real estate brokerage out of back in 2016. It was located on Merrill Road in Pittsfield, which is kind of like the main drag. It's a 4 lane, not a highway, but it's like where all the businesses are. It's where the plazas are, the Bed Bath and Beyond, the auto dealerships, the General Dynamics has like a business, big building there. The U.S. Navy has some space. GE was there. So it's like this really nice, big direct road, a lot of businesses, very business oriented. And next to the building that I had bought by call it luck or preparedness, there was a large grass lot. It was about a half acre, but it was part of the parcel that I had purchased. So my building sat on like a little 0.2 acre space, and then there was a half acre of open green space. Originally, we had bought it and we thought, oh, we'd like to bring our dogs to work. So we want to have a place where we can throw the frisbee to the dog. And other people had brought their dogs to that little space because it's the only green space that kind of existed on this road. And after we had bought the building in October of 16, the city of Pittsfield stepped up to the plate early in the cannabis revolution of the state of Massachusetts and said, we are going to support cannabis businesses in the state of Massachusetts. They were amongst the first community to say yes. And within 48 hours of that happening, as a real estate broker, my phone rang no less than 100 times within 2 days.
Hmm.
And it was people from across the globe, Canada, California, Colorado, Oregon, anywhere there was a legalized marketplace, were blowing up my phone to help them not only find real estate, but because I had owned this piece of green space on what the city of Pittsfield called the Green Mile, where they were going to allow cannabis operators to be, people naturally called me to be like, what are you going to do with that space? Are you looking to develop it? I'd love to pay you. I'll partner with you. I can start paying you right away. I just want to be there early because in cannabis, the early adopters were the most successful people because they were at top of mind. And after my phone had blown up like crazy, I kind of had said to my wife and my brothers, this might be a once in a lifetime opportunity that we really got to look into more. And so the Bloom Brothers was born, right? And the Bloom Brothers it's kind of like a play on words. It's a family oriented business. It's the ownership is me, my wife, and my two brothers. And we opened up a cannabis dispensary. We were the third recreational only, not connected to medical dispensary that got to open in the state of Massachusetts back in March of 2020. We built the building from scratch after visiting many other dispensaries, talking to many other dispensary owners, same way that I did with real estate. And we said, tell us what you would have done different. That was usually the first question I asked. And you'd be surprised. They would be like, oh, I would have built the basement out and I would have had my vault downstairs. I would have put an elevator in. I would have done that. I would have done. So we start hearing all of these ideas and we were like, well, we got this bare piece of land. And after we heard all the ideas, we started just drawing them out. And then we went to an engineering firm who visualized our ideas and they built us this retail store on paper. We then found the contractors and we built it for real, and we said, I know it's going to be expensive. I know it's going to be a big investment, but based on speaking to people in all these other states, they were like, if you can open within the first, say, wave, you're gonna be just fine. And we did just that. And, based on that business, that's really what kind of created the ability for people to trust me in this industry. I was an early adopter. I got open first, and I got put through the ringer. We opened on March 2nd. We got shut down by the governor on March 23rd for 59 days. So I got to have 3 weeks in business and I couldn't open after that. He said, you're a non-essential business. You got to shut down, Governor Baker. And we were closed for 59 days and it was painstaking because we had everything on the line. I mean, our home equity lines were tapped out. Our credit cards tapped out. Everything was tapped. And we had to close and somehow keep our people employed. And cannabis is a federally illegal business, right? Which means that they don't qualify for federal government assistance like unemployment and other things that exist for people that were pandemic based, employees. They were able to file. My people couldn't. So the only person who could bail them out, that was me. It was me and my family. And we did. We kept our employees. We paid them through the pandemic, not knowing how long it was going to last. And we eventually got back open,
Wow, what an exciting time. So let me just kind of
Yeah.
take our listeners back into the decisions you made. So you're a successful real estate business. You had this opportunity with a piece of land, and then you decided to move into cannabis. There are a lot of other things you could have done with that land, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of saw this opportunity based on market demand, did a lot of research, talked to a lot of people. What are kind of the core things you learned through that whole process? If you had to distill it down to like 3 or 4 key
Yeah.
principles that are critical in launching a new business in an industry where you haven't done retail, you came out of, tech and in, maybe retail with Wayfair, but that's a whole different thing, right?
Yeah, no,
Anything
that
like related
never really retail. I had a job at Old Navy once for like 6 months. It
to
was, but yeah, I had never spent any time in retail. And I think a core principle, dream big, right? Like you have to sometimes just put it out in the ether and it's not manifestation or anything, but it's, hey, if I can do this, what could come on the other side of it, right? So dreaming big just basically means I'm going to put I'm going to take a blank slate, an easel, and I'm going to throw all the paint at it. And hopefully, in my vision, I can see a painting on the other side, right? And I know I'm going to have to take paint away here and erase this, but eventually, if you can dream it, you just got to find the people who can make your dreams come a reality, right? Whether it's the engineer, whether it's the contractor, whether it's the family members. Believe me, my family members corral me in quite frequently, right? Because I'm always dreaming big. I can say to you very, very frequently, I say to my wife, oh, let's look at this. And she's like, can we just finish one thing before we go on to the next thing? And that's just my personality. But a lot of times, you got to go through 100 bad ideas to get one good one. And if you can succeed at 1%, you can be amongst the 1% of successful people.
So
And yeah,
principle one, dream big.
dream big.
That's good. And
Absolutely.
keep taking us through that. So you're
Yeah.
dreaming big. What's
Dream two, our number two, execute bigger.
oh
You have to execute on that dream, right? You have to be able to plan how that dream is going to be achieved. And I always keep a notepad handy. And in my notepad, I might have the top line might be the title of the dream, right? Opening a cannabis dispensary. Then there's 14 pages after that of everything I have to accomplish, right? And because it's with my family, we do a lot of divide and conquering, right? Where I'm jotting down notes, they're jotting down notes. We're then coming together and all comparing our notes. And there's cross-examination where it's like, well, I think it's really important to do the marketing, but my brother's like, well, yes, we're going to do the marketing, but we need to find customers. How do we find customers? So you start then reorganizing and reprioritizing how you're going to execute, and you then got to put that all into a plan because especially if you don't have money, right? If you don't have to open this dispensary, it was going to be millions of dollars in our grand scheme because we had to build the building, we had to bring in the inventory, we had to hire the people, we had to do, and we didn't have that millions of dollars at our disposal. It wasn't just sitting in a bank account waiting to be used. So we had to say, okay, if we can put everything in paper, what are the projections on the back end so that we can pay all that back, right? Is there a bank that's willing to work with us? Is there investors? Is there, family? Is whatever you have connections to or access to, you got to start by executing bigger than your dream, right? And once you do the execution plan, number three is follow through. So many people dream big, they plan it all out, and then they're like, this is going to be really hard, and they give up. Right? Like that to me, the follow through, actually doing it, it is the most critical part of anything, right? I have said to you, David, already a couple times in our conversations, your word is your bond. And just like your bond, your follow through and your execution is everything in the world of business. Because if I promised you I was going to be here at 11 o'clock and I showed up at 11:15, you'd be like, Nate, we're not doing this interview. It's over, right? Like you have a schedule. I have a schedule. We all have things that we have to do. So you have to be able to follow through with what you say you're going to do if you want to be successful in the world of business.
So important. So,
Yeah.
what I heard you say is, think about the dream big is really
Hmm.
critical. Dream big, execute bigger. But before you do the execution, it's the plan.
Hmm.
Dream big, have critical plans, and execute. But those are pretty high level, and I think the
There.
devil is in the details, right?
It
And
is.
so, and I love what you said. You actually have to do it. I think about that all the time. Like
I
I,
know.
I love the planning process. I love the dreaming process, but then you actually have to do it. And
Do you make a grocery list, David?
oh yeah, I
Oh
mean,
yeah. So
yeah,
let me ask you a
yeah.
question. When you go to the grocery store, do you stick to that list?
Pretty much. Yeah, I
Yeah.
expanded a little bit, but I actually I
Sure.
use
Oh, yeah, I forgot to put milk on there. I got to grab milk, right? You can go outside the list. But when you think about just something as simple as grocery shopping, if I don't have a list, I don't go to the grocery store,
hmm
right? I know I need groceries, but my wife and I actually share this app called Our Groceries. She puts stuff on, I put stuff on. And it's like, but if there's not like 10 things on that list, I'm not going grocery shopping. But when there are, you got to execute on that and you have to fit it into your schedule because I got three kids and they're going to go hungry if I don't. And it's something as simple as that. It's just, but you got to follow through. You got to, I know I need groceries. Here's my dream. I got to now plan, what do I need for groceries? I got to open up the fridge and say, oh, I need blueberries. I need strawberries. I need this. I need milk. Put it all on your list, and then you got to actually go and follow through with that plan. Or in today's day and age, most people just get it delivered to their house anyway. But even still, you still got to go through that process of ordering it and buying it and doing it.
You got to actually do it. Well, you've done that successfully with this business, but then you've done it with other businesses
Yeah,
following. I just wanted you to talk. We just have
sure.
a few minutes left. Just
Yep.
talk about the process of kind of repeating that
Mhm.
process of research, finding big problems to solve, solving those problems, and then creating businesses out of that again
Yeah,
in other
yeah,
industries because you've done it
sure.
successfully. You haven't, your strategy isn't, hey, I've done this one cannabis dispensary. I'm going to do 15 more in three more
Yep,
states. You've
yep,
kind of taken some approach of starting other businesses that are
yeah,
more local to you or more regional in other industries. But talk about how you've done that again, the
sure.
research, how you've kind of gotten to that the phase of
Yeah,
creating other successful businesses.
I think it points back to just being able to ask these critical questions, like, talking to other operators. I don't treat people as competitors. You can be right around the corner from me and we can be in the same exact business, but my customers are my customers, your customers are your customers, right? And it's okay if we also share some of the same customers. You have to look at it like people are coming to my store for specific reasons. Maybe I'm carrying a brand you're not carrying. Maybe I'm treating them a certain way when they come to buy these certain items, right? And then maybe they go to your store because you're open later or earlier or whatever. Your customers are your customers. You have it's not about guarding them, it's about treating them with respect, right? So when it comes to other operators, I try to share with them any information they'd ever be willing to ask for, right? If they say, hey, we're really struggling with our POS system, which one are you using? And I'm using a different one than them. I'm happy to show them the back end of mine. Like I don't, we got to collaborate in this world today in order to be successful rather than compete with one another, right? So by being a collaborator, and I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I'm always willing to discuss with people anything. And a lot of times when you get to talk to other business decision makers, you can get to the root of their problems very quickly. So what I'm always asking other operators is, tell me about something that you're doing more than once per day that you wish you could take off your plate. Right? Like if I say something like that to another business operator, even you, David, tell me something you find yourself doing at least 2 times per day that you'd love to take off your plate. Go ahead. Tell
I
me.
would say doing my email.
Doing your email. Perfect. This is
Yep.
a perfect exact response. Now, David, if I could tell you for 15 minutes today when you do your email, can you open up like the snipping tool and just do a quick video record of you doing your email for me, okay? And then I want you to fire that over to me when you're done. And I'm then going to go and find you a virtual assistant who will literally do it for you for pennies on the dollar to get all that time back. Or we're going to now structure your day, David. So you're going to do your email once in the morning and once in the evening, and that's it. You're not going to have your email open all day, because not only is it causing you maybe a little bit of stress, or maybe you have 500 unopened and unread emails or something like that, but it boils down to there are people who provide these solutions out there. Maybe you just don't know that they exist, right? And maybe I've had experience with that VA, and I say, I actually have got a great VA, David, that I literally have taught her to write emails just like me, just like using my tense, using my words. And then, for the first few weeks, you're going to review the emails that she's about to send, and you're going to say yes to this, no to this, yes to this, no to this. And, anything that's critical will still flow through to you. So, you have to check it, because she's going to start understanding, or he's going to start understanding what you really need to read versus what you can just shoot replies to, or blah, blah, blah.
Well, in that example, what I hear you talking about is what I might call strategic empathy.
Yep.
Like you're understanding my problem, you're asking questions, you're
Mm-hmm.
getting a good sense of what's going on, but it's combined with great knowledge, because
Yeah.
you've got knowledge and experience that you can bring to bear to this problem that I'm having that I might not be aware of the solution. And then you're totally willing to share that solution. And then if this is a business opportunity, you're totally willing to charge me
Build
for
it.
it to
Exactly. And
build it
and
and
that's
make it
where
happen, right?
that's
Yeah.
where a couple of businesses came from in the cannabis industry. I talked to one operator, and I trust this operator, and they're across the state in the Boston area. And she says to me, you know what I'm spending a lot of time doing? I'm spending a lot of time going online and browsing menus of retailers that I'm selling product to. And I said, well, that seems pretty mundane. How many hours a day are you spending? And she's like, 4 to 5 a day, every day. My sales reps are doing it. I'm doing it just to see if my product is still on their menu. So I have to browse their whole entire edible line, search by my name, and see what's missing to figure out when it's time to reorder, right? Because there was no autonomy. And I said, well, what if I built something where I can scrape all the menus of all the stores you're in and all the stores you're not in, and report back to you when you go out of stock there, like instantaneously with a morning email, right? And thus Lit Alerts was born. And I said, what would you be willing to pay for that? She's like, so you're telling me I never have to spend another hour, another minute browsing a menu, and she goes, name your price. And I literally said, well, that's not the way I operate. How much would you realistically be willing to pay? She said, I'd pay you $500 a month for the rest of my life,
Right.
literally. And I was like, maybe we got something here. And if you're willing to do it and other operators are struggling with similar problems, maybe we have a product, right? A product is different from a business. Maybe we have a product, but Then all of a sudden you find other uses for this product that you've created. Not only can I do out of stock alerts, I can do analytics, I can do data analysis, I can do reporting, I can do X, Y, and Z. Wait, now I don't have a product. I actually have a business. Now I need to go out and start hiring the people that can build this business and take this business to the next level with my help. And that's where, that's where I've tried to create these opportunities, and it comes from being able to ask the tough question and ultimately being able to come up with a potential solution that you can discuss openly with another operator, and then be able to turn it back and say, if I build this, are you willing to pay for it? Therefore, the businesses get born.
Wow. So there's so many great ideas in that. One is that you're engaged with people all the time. You're talking to people. You're not just, you're in the Berkshires, which is a beautiful part of Massachusetts, but you're not just isolated, sitting on a mountaintop, not talking.
No.
You're out there talking to people. And then you're engaging them in hard issues in their business and maybe, in their lives. And you're asking the tough questions, and then creating a whole process to create a solution out of that. That's very powerful. I think, it's very different than the process of other entrepreneurs who say, hey, I got a great idea for a solution. I know what it is, and I'm just going to push it on people. You're kind of you almost have the market ready by the time you go to market,
And I'm willing to give it away.
Yeah.
Right. So that's another thing. I'm willing to let you use it and tell me why it sucks. That, like, legitimately tell me what you wish it had that it doesn't have. And I've beta tested people legitimately for 9 months using the service for free, but I can see them logging in every single day, getting it ingrained in their daily operational, this is what they do every day. Then all of a sudden, after 9 months, I say, thank you for all the valuable feedback. I've built out all those features you've wanted me to build, and we have a roadmap for everything that's coming up based on the feedback of the actual users. It's now time to start paying. I know we said we eventually wanted to get to $500 a month. I'm going to get you at $250 now for the next 6 months. And then if we continue to build the stuff that's on the roadmap, it's going to be $350, $450, $500. But then after $500, it's just going to get better and better and better and better, because certain things like machine learning, AI, all this integratable stuff that keeps coming down the pipeline from a tech perspective. All I'm trying to do, make your life easier, David. How can I make your life a little bit more autonomous so that you're getting a much more polished product that you can make your daily decisions on? That's it. That's my new business, Little Alerts, that I've been doing.
That's awesome. Nate, where do I sign? I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, Little Alerts is a cannabis-based data analytics programming, but we're using the members' feedback to build the tool. It's totally different than, I know exactly what you want, David, I'm going to build it. But it's like, hey, David, what do you want? And let me build it. There's such a different discussion, when you phrase it one way. It's, I know what you want, David. You're a blue shirt wearing guy. I know what guys who wear blue shirts want, right? But rather than, David, what do you actually want me to build here? And you're like, I hate blue shirts. I wish I was wearing red shirts. I would have never known that. You know what I mean? It's just, if you ask a question and you actually wait for a response. My dad taught me this so long ago, and it's one of the most valuable pieces of advice. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. If you can do twice as much listening as you do talking when you're in a business decision or a business chat, you're going to win every single time.
Yeah. Well, you clearly used your advantage, and you're building some great businesses and making a difference in the lives of a lot of people. So, Nate, thanks for this great conversation.
Thank you.
We're pretty much out of time, but
I understand.
If people want to connect directly with you, learn about your business, the solution, and just talk about, life in their business, what's the best way to connect with you?
I'm super available. I mean, you just search my name and my phone number comes right up. Like, I'm not hard to find. Nate at Little Alerts, Nate at Bloom Brothers, Nate at Royal Property Group, Nate at pretty much any email address you can imagine in the ether. Just send it and I might end up with it. No, but realistically, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Nathan Girard. I'm very vocal on there. I do a lot of engagement. I try to get on there 2 or 3 times a week at least, where I'm posting stuff that's relevant based on these conversations, David. Like, I'm going to post about this podcast, after you polish it up and everything, and I'll post, and I'd love to share it with people, because I think other people may find even the smallest amount of intrinsic value in any conversation. They should be digesting it, right? Like there's certain people I love to follow because there's just little tidbits of their personal life in there, but it's always this great backing out. Do you know who Gary Vee is?
Yeah.
I love Gary Vee because he's so real and raw. He doesn't post about his private jets and his multi-million dollar courtside seats to the Knicks. He posts about real stuff. Like, and that to me means so much more than some of these people, like these social media stars, oh, I had lunch with the Prince of Dubai. It's like, I don't care about that. Like, but how did you get there? How did you get to that table? That's what I think is so much more compelling content. But those are the people that I like to follow. Real people with real stories and people who have put in some real work to get to where they're going.
Yeah, so many good ideas. Well, you shared a lot of good ideas with our listeners today, Nate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really
appreciate
you taking the time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David. I appreciate your time. I look forward to talking again.